Hello, I'm called Tim, and it's around noon, so that means it's time for my live hangout. Big news in New York City today is that Central Park 5 are going to get a settlement. New York City is going to settle with them, and I want to deal with that, how they got paid, and how they got uh, put into prison wrongly in the first place. And I'm going to deal with, I'm coming from my book. Scholars have to have documentation, right? That's what you all like. I could give it to the top of my head, but you want proof. So, great issues in American history, and I'm reading Judge Tawney in the Dred Scott v. Sanford case. And he says, now, the right of property in a slave is distinctly and expressly affirmed in the Constitution. The right to traffic in it, like an ordinary article of merchandise and property, was guaranteed to the citizens of the United States, in every state that might desire it, for 20 years, and the government, in express terms, is pledged to protect it in all future time. If the slave escapes from its owner, and no word can be found in the Constitution which gives Congress a greater power over slave property, or which entitles property of that kind to less protection than property of any other description, the only power conferred is the power coupled with the duty of guarding and protecting the owner and his rights. The 5 boys were property once they were arrested. Why were they arrested? Because they were dark. I mean, any dark person could have been arrested in that park that night. They're the first ones they saw. They're dark. That's good enough. Let's continue. Upon these considerations, it is the opinion of the court that the act of Congress, the Missouri Compromise, which prohibited a citizen from holding and owning property of this kind in the territory of the United States north of the line therein mentioned, is not warranted by the Constitution, and therefore void, and that neither Dred Scott himself nor any of his family were made free by being carried into this territory, even if they had been carried there by the owner with the intention of becoming a permanent resident. Upon the whole, therefore, it is the judgment of this court, this is the United States Supreme Court, that it appears by the record before us that the plaintiff in error is not a citizen of Missouri, in the sense in which that word is used in the Constitution, and that the Circuit Court of the United States, for that reason, had no jurisdiction in the case and could give no judgment in it. Its judgment for the defendant must consequently be reversed, and a mandate issued directing the suit to be dismissed for want of jurisdiction, which basically means Dred Scott had no rights then, we have no rights today in the U.S. court system. We have no rights when it comes to law enforcement that they have to obey or respect. We have no rights on the state level. We have no rights on the federal level. I know there have been some amendments, but even in the amendment, and I did a video on that as well, as long as you're incarcerated, you can be enslaved. And we're incarcerated. Why? Just because we're dark walking down the street. So, how did the Central Park 5 get their reparations? How did they get their money if they are not respected in the system? And by the way, let me say before I go to that, let me say there's a way around this, because just because you live here on this territory doesn't mean you have to be subject to the United States court systems and law enforcement systems. Plenty of communities have their own law enforcement system through community watches, neighborhood watches, and some communities even have their own judicial system. I got a friend, Brother Gene, who's a mediator, and I think all dark people should be going to people like Gene. Sit down with him, whatever he says, Whatever he decides, you go by it and you take that. Okay? You don't have to go to a court to work out your problems. You sign a document, and whatever he agrees on, that's what you accept. It's just like when you go on these court shows, you sign something before that says you're going to abide by whatever the judge on that show says that you do, or whatever ruling that judge makes. That's what I should say. So I think we should go to people like Brother Gene and let him mediate our things. But we don't. We drag our business into the U.S. court. We drag our men into a child support court. And what you got to understand is the court system sees you as property, a thing. You might as well be a cow dragging a bull in about a calf, because that's the way they see you. Now we're going to deal with how these boys got their money. They've been suing the city since 2002, and they got nowhere. You know why? Because the court system doesn't respect you. The reason they got the money is because Ken Burns and his daughter, which are well respected in the documentary film business, made a documentary about the Central Park Five. These white people said this was so outrageous that these boys lost their lives, their childhood, unjustly, and they're not being compensated. They put it out there, and the rest of white America said that was unfair, give them their money. And because whites told other whites this was unfair, the black boys got their money. So they got their funds indirectly because whites dealt with whites. That's a different situation than me being unjustly accused of something, going to the court, and you giving it to me directly. You're not going to give it to me directly because you know I have no rights as far as you're concerned. And those boys would have never got that money without this document. They would have been waiting 40, 50 years. Maybe their children would have gotten it if some whites had felt guilty at that time. But this documentary pushed it through. And that is how they got their money. Now, having said that, I want to give Ken Burns and his daughter a lot of credit, and all those people who backed the film, who said this is ridiculous, the court has to pay them. I want to give them credit, and I want to give these boys credit for standing there and being whole enough, or together enough, or unified enough as a group to push and to get these funds, because they're brothers now and they hang together. And I saw them in a documentary, and I've seen them in a New York Times panel with Ken Burns and his daughter, and they're together, and that's cool. One of the brothers, the light-skinned brother, is really, really broken. I mean, you just see it. You see it in his face, and he had a hard time in prison. And I really hope that these brothers could get some rest. I mean, money is not everything. Money is not even really most things, but I hope that they can use this and maybe get their minds back together. Maybe they could see someone professionally, or maybe they can, because they don't have to work now, commit themselves to a system of study to understand who they are better and better understand where they are, so that they can use these resources wisely for their children and for their community. If any of my viewers or anyone in my chat room want to speak now or forever hold your peace. Going once, going twice. Until next time, if you are sane, keep your head up. There's nothing wrong with you. It's everyone else that has the problem.